Well, Trey, it's been a while since we've got to do a podcast.
I know it.
First of all, give me an update. I know you got a lot going on with your life, your ministry, things like that. Come on, let's get an update.
Well, I've got to keep my calendar in front of me. The last couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, we started a church here in Weatherford
Awesome,
about a month
by the way.
ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
very cool.
And so I did church here, and then I went over and did church. I think y'all were over there at one of Ben's opens on Sunday, and then I was in Colorado Monday preaching, and then I flew to Montana and preached there and roped at the Wrangler Finals. That was Montana. Then I was in Florida Thursday. Got to come home for one day on Friday, and then I was at a men's conference in San Antonio Saturday, spoke at a church Sunday, then went to Argentina Sunday night. 14 and a half hours flying there. And as soon as I landed, just ran through the shower and went right in. We was over there teaching leadership to the country's government. And I was over there for 6 days. I think we ended up training 21,000 leaders over there. There's a little over 100 of us. And we split up, we'd go into different government organizations and businesses and just developing their leaders and showing them how to develop their leaders. And so it was really a awesome time with John Maxwell. And I got in Saturday and then preached Sunday. And so I've got to be home for a few days, and that's been nice. And that's just a small glimpse. But
Yeah.
we're working to go back. Even on the way back from Argentina, I was talking to the crew over in Africa. We'll be going back over there in February. I'd gone a couple times this year, and the last time I was over there, we had about 300 government leaders and bishops and stuff together, and I didn't know what all was taking place, but after the first day, they came to me and they says, "Can you extend this, longer?" And I said, "I can't. I apologize. I'm booked, and they said, "Well, can we have dinner with you?" And so I said, "Sure." And so we had dinner that night and everything, and they just, said, "When you come back, can you go into different territories? We'll get behind you. We'll help, do whatever needs to be done." And so that's what we're working on right now, going into new territories in Tanzania. We drilled a couple of water wells for orphanages and stuff over there. Of course, we do a lot with the schools as far as buying sporting equipment, rice, stuff like that. Then we'll do crusades. But then, of course, the leadership development is my heart, just because it is, you develop leaders, there's multiplication there, because
Right.
then it trickles down, whereas the crusades and that type of stuff is more one-on-one. But what was cool about that is we had several hundred pastors that came in, and they'll walk for 7-8 hours. And they'll come and stay there, and we'll do the leadership in the morning, then we do crusades in the afternoon. And so we take those pastors with us and get them connected, the people that get saved and stuff. And so I've been doing a lot of leadership stuff in the corporate world, and of course a lot of clinics. I've got to kind of pick and choose on my competing.
Right.
Nowadays I try to pick out the big ones. I'll go to the the World Show, the Rope Horse for Charity, the finale in Vegas, and so yeah, we got plenty going.
You've always been going, Trey, but it seems like over probably the last 4 or 5 years, it's just more and more and more. Did you ever kind of see it going this way, or what was your visions for it? If I were to ask you, hey, what's your life going to look like 5 years from now? Because I know you're goal oriented and have things like that, but at the same time, there's been so many new opportunities that you've taken advantage of and really pursued. How have you just tried to keep an open mind to that? And
well, I keep it running through, my purpose, my everything that I do. I want people to know God, and I want them to be the best them they can be. So when an opportunity comes my way, I'm always running it through that filter,
Right.
And I know my areas of giftedness or ministry, leadership, and the rodeo world. And so those are my main things that I look at first. I want to stay in my areas of strength. Is it in alignment with my purpose, even though it's going to look different into a different group of people? And I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. I'm not afraid to look foolish, so to say. And that's not natural. It's just I've trained myself that I realize I've got to fail forward. If I'm going to be good at stuff, then there's going to be a lot of mistakes and on the way.
Right.
And a guy has to be okay with that as long as we're learning from it.
has there been like certain failures or moments you're like, at the time, they're like, hey, this is pretty devastating, but then you get reflecting and look, you got anything that jumps out to you when you start thinking about that?
Well, sure. 2010, well, after I won the rookie year in 2000, the next year I laid my roping down and I just pastored churches for the next 9 years. And 2010, I was overseeing 3 non-denominational churches during that time, and I felt like I was supposed to, the Lord started talking to me about traveling and ministering again and competing again, and I was like, Lord, these guys haven't taken 9 years off,
Yeah.
And so when I knew that that's what the Lord wanted me to do, because there was a lot of fasting and prayer that went into it, because I know the lifestyle, I know the demands that it takes on you. But when he started showing me just glimpses of people's eternal destiny being attached to me going back and doing what I'm doing now, we got things in place, and I moved the lady I was married to at that time up to be closer to her family. And we had 2 kids at that time, and so I went back on the road, and after several months, come to find out, she had an affair, moved money. I mean, it was just a mess. And so I ended up in a friend of mine's barn, thinking this is not the way I saw my life going as far as rebuilding my life, because I went from doing good rodeoing, was sponsored everything, and I was traveling and ministering, and then I shut that down and then went to making just $30,000, pastoring one church, but then built everything back up, making 6 figures, and I went from 6 figures again when he's talking to me about this to making nothing. Had no sponsors, no partners, to start back over again. And so to see how God has rebuilt my life, because during all that, I didn't have any money, didn't know how I was going to take care of the kids. And this is just 15 years ago. And I'm thinking, okay, God, I thought I was following you. I thought I was doing, these are questions that I had going on. And he started taking to me, how David, how he'd step out, come back, and the whole village was ransacked and everything. Same deal. And so making a decision that, okay, just because people have changed, circumstances have changed, God has never changed. And his purpose for my life hasn't changed just because circumstances changed.
Right.
And so when I settled that in my heart, and I realized nobody can fire me from being me. Nobody. And I did a leadership teaching a while back on that pace of, would I hire me or would I fire me? And I went through every area of my life. Would I hire me or fire me to be a dad? Would I hire me or fire me to be a husband? Would I hire me or fire me to run my businesses? Whatever that is. And I fired myself on some places. Okay. And I had to fill back out the application, but it caused me to lift my game.
Yeah.
So learning through that, and after a couple of years, my wife now, when I was going through the divorce, she was in prison. And she was having an encounter with God, and so after a couple of years, I felt like my heart was good. I didn't want to carry baggage into the next, but I was like, all right, Lord, I trust you. I feel like I'm ready. And so the week that I moved to get close to my oldest 2 kids, because their mom had gotten remarried and everything, that's when I met Heather.
Okay.
And so after our first date, and it was so funny, is because the Bible says to call things that be not as though they were. Part of faith is your words and your expectation. And so I'm talking to the Lord, God, how I'm wired, and so this is, I'm just believing that she loves you and loves me, respects you, respects me, and then even her, just her build and everything else. And so I'd go into Starbucks every day and I'd order a tall blonde. Every day I'd go in tall blonde.
Yeah.
Well, now I got my tall blonde. I haven't been back since, as far as ordering that. And so I learned a lot through that time. Our second date, Heather tells me her whole story. She's like, I got to tell you my past, from the drug addiction, the rehabs, the abortion, the prison. She's like, if you don't want anything to do with me, I totally get it. And I'm like, well, at least let me pray about it. At least give me a little bit of. And so I did. I got before the Lord, and just because I didn't want to go through that again. I knew that I had, and of course, you're always dealing with people and wills, but I knew I had to have a warrior for my life to do what I'm doing, that wouldn't leave me in the trenches, so to say, that would get in there and fight with me. Because when you're doing what I do, there's a lot of spiritual warfare. There's a lot, you have, just in anything that you're making a difference. There's, not everybody's going to give you a hand clap. You're going to have a lot of obstacles and a lot of adversity, and that, just doing what you've done. And she's a warrior, and now God uses her around the world as well. And because at first she thought she was going to get to be behind the scenes and just help me, but the Lord had other plans, and of course she uses her story to reach a lot of women and a lot of people And
Right.
so yeah, that was a turning point in my life. If I was the Lord, I probably would have done it differently, because He didn't cause any of that. But as far as He helped me through every step of that, to take what the enemy meant for harm and turn it for my good. But I've been able to help a lot of people from that pain. I was determined. That was one of my Goliaths, that I was going to learn as much as I could through that and help as many people as I could from what I'd learned.
Right. I mean, in Trey, in the Bible, there's a lot of struggle in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of hard times, and I think that's something that just helps builds character.
Yeah.
It really gets you asking the questions, and really thinking through things at those lower moments. And so I think it does add a lot of foundation to what you're doing, or if what you're doing is incorrect, it kind of crumbles, right?
Yeah.
So let's go with this kind of this direction. You talked about asking the Lord for and finding what's on your heart, but to me, when I view it for myself, it's kind of murky at times. It's never just real clear of what I want to do or the path I want to go down, right? And it seems like there's a lot of options. Then when you get further down the road, you realize there wasn't. But at least when you feel like you made some good choices, right? So how, especially let's kind of keep it with a younger group. It can be from high school to college age, and specifically those people that have a lot of life in front of them and a lot of direction that they can go. But how do you start finding things or finding a direction that feels right? How do you talk to God through that and help? But also, what happens if you're maybe not going down the right path and you're pursuing something, but it might not? I think you see people get into something that they work hard, but they may or may not love it. It's really close. They don't hate it. It's not just black and white for them. So there's a few things right there. You can start it however you want.
Well, and it always goes back to our relationship with the Lord. For me.
Okay.
When I first accepted the Lord, I was 20 years old. And I'd quit school, had gone through a bunch of mess, come out of the drugs, alcohol, all that type of stuff. But I wanted to know that God was real. I wanted to know that His Word worked. And so it put me on a journey of, okay, don't be religious with me. I know there has to be more than just going to Sunday school, going to church. All that's very important. But I wanted to know the God that showed up for David. How did I get Him to show up for my horses? How did I get Him to show up when I'm helping me with my roping? And I began to realize that it's not about what you don't do or can't do. It's about what you can do when you start serving the Lord. Because my perception of God growing up, it was about what you couldn't do. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And so when I realized, I shifted my focus, okay, what can I do? I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I started to locate my desire. Psalms 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He gives you the desires of your heart. And I began to remove money, that if money was no option, what would I be doing? If I could do anything, what would I be doing? Because you hear the saying, you find something you like to do and you get so good at it that people will be happy to pay you for it. Well, that's a true statement. I was just naive enough to believe it, I guess, whenever I first started going after the Lord, that, okay, I had a desire. I can still see myself coming out of a trailer house in El Paso, Texas, not knowing the FBI was going to come in and bust the people with 4.5 tons of drugs just a few months down the road. But when I gave my life to the Lord, I had a desire. My desire started to change. I couldn't hardly rope myself, much less anything else. But I'd go out there and I'd rope the sawhorse, and I started working at the desires. So locating your desires are really important. But then also having the right people around you. When we put God first, He says He will add all things unto us. That even means the right relationships, right opportunities, whatever we need to be who we're created to be. And so He started connecting me with people in the roping world. I went and worked for Rich Skelton and T. Woolman, and lived in Llano for those years. Then I went back to college, and then that's when we had an accountability group in college. It was me and Trevor Brazil, Jim Locke, Josh Crow, Miles Bell, And we were there for each other. We prayed for each other. We stood for each other. We just went after God together. And so locating your desires, locating what you're passionate about doing during this time, Pace, I just had a desire. I just wanted to help people. I had no idea, now we reach hundreds of millions of people every week around the world through the different TV shows and all the stuff that we do. And, I was just standing in front of the president of countries. And, it's something, I think, how did I get there? Because a lot of times we think, okay, well, I don't know the right people. I don't have enough money. But I remember I was in college and I just had a desire to help people. And I thought, well, I can go sign up for the Big Brother program. And that kid's in 3rd grade and I'm in college. Surely I can help him with his math and his English. I don't know how much I helped him, but, I just started somewhere. And I just started showing up, being consistent with that kid every week. He didn't have a dad, didn't have a male figure. But it started with that one, acting on that desire to add value to people. I just want to help people. I want people to know the God that I know. And so I started with the one. I never would have got to the people that I get to stand before today if I wouldn't have been willing to do the one.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to catch like I catch today if I wasn't willing to get started roping the sawhorse. Well, it's the same with leadership or any principle in life. How do you find that, locate your desires? How do you find that? Have the right people in your life that love you enough to be truthful with you. I'm not talking about you don't want people that are always telling you what you can't do and you don't have money, you're not smart enough. I remember I wasn't the best student in school, but one of my first books, I signed it and gave it to my English teacher and told him, thank you for not giving up on me. And it wasn't the A students that wrote the books, it was me that just barely squeaked by. But locating the desires and acting on those desires, having the right people that will tell you the truth and believe in your dream. And sometimes that's lonely. Sometimes that takes work. Sometimes it takes effort. Having the right mentors in your life. I invest a lot in myself with mentors and coaches because I believe I'm worth it. But I had to get to that point. That's what's so funny to me in the Western world. There's a lot of people don't believe. They'll spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on entry fees, but they won't spend the $800 on a clinic.
Yeah.
Or they'll drive all over the place, but they won't work on themselves. And one thing that I learned, that if I grow me personally on the inside, everything around me grows. If I stop growing me, everything around me stops growing. But if I keep growing, it's a different mindset than just a goal mindset. Having that growth mindset, it's like there is no finish line. I know there's more in me than what I'm walking in right now. I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful. But the nature of God never stops. It's always moving forward. It's always expanding. It's always growing. So if you're hanging out with God, you're going to be moving forward. But I always keep a pulse on, okay, is this really what I'm created to do? Am I gifted in this area? Is there the desire there? Is there fruit? I'm looking to see if there's fruit there. And now it's to the point there's a lot I've got to let go, that I got to keep. Okay, if we're going to embrace more, I've got to be willing to sacrifice. The law of sacrifice says that I've got to be willing to give up in order to go up. And so just locating what those things are.
So finding desire. Do you believe there's beginner's luck a little bit with this, or some signs as you let's just say something that you pursue, whether it's helping people, a little bit of beginner's luck, you meet the right person right off, or there's little signs hey, this is kind of worth going down. Do you see that? Do you feel like that happens? I mean, I know it's kind of weird, but I feel like that's the thought of beginner's luck. I think I've read that in a book like The Alchemist or something like that, but I thought it was such a good analogy. Is when you start something, it seems like a lot of that you really stay hooked on, a lot of really good things fall into place.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's signs you should be looking for, or that's just, I don't know, I thought about
those
it that way.
The word desire comes from two words, which means to father. Desire means to father. So the Father puts the desires in us. It's wired in us from before we were born. Yeah. I mean, it's in our DNA. We were created for a purpose, and purpose never changes. Now, vision can change, but purpose, the reason why we're here, never changes. And so a person locating that, when you start tapping into that, it sets things in motion. God begins to move and orchestrate things to come to you, whether you look at it as luck or whatever it is. It's the hand of God, because that's what you're created to do. So things begin to move to come into you. So when we're operating, that's why it's so important to not just try to make money, but step into the area that you're passionate about. You have a desire to do that, and then money has to come.
Right.
Because that's what begins to happen, because that is what you're created to do, and God is more than enough. There's always more than enough resources to do whatever we're called and created to do. But a lot of times people never tap into that because they stop. It gets hard and they stop.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I was going to go with it next. I think the beginner's luck thing happens, and it kind of gets you excited about it. Like whether it's roping or something, you kind of get the bug for it, like they say. And a lot of things will come into place, and you get the right horse, and you're around the right people. But then you find these spots where, hey, it gets really hard.
It's hard, yeah.
And I think this is where you kind of come at a little bit of an impasse. One, I think discipline and the ability to kind of pursue it consistently and keep refining it, or is this really what I'm supposed to be doing, or was this kind of just helping me get to the next thing?
Yeah.
And this is where I think a lot of people get lost, right, in those things. That right there, right, where they know the next step they got to take, but they don't maybe want to take it, or they're maybe afraid to take it, don't think they're good enough, whatever it is, beliefs. But what do you suggest for how to view that stage? Once you've pursued something, things are going well, but now it's getting hard. Now it's like, hey, maybe I can't provide for a family. Maybe whatever it is, maybe I can't get to this level of roping, whatever skill it is in life. But I think there's that stage, and that's I think this one's where we lose a lot of people pursuing
their dreams, their passions. Because it does get hard. You know, anything worthwhile, when you think about it, is uphill.
Right.
But a lot of times we want to go uphill with downhill habits. And so when it gets really hard, because your gift will take you a certain place, but then it's the choices we put with our gifts that determines if we're going to keep going or not. So that's where I've got to count the cost. Okay, with this gift and this desire, you know, if money was no option, would I still be doing this? You know, okay, and if the answer is yes, then okay, what else? Maybe I don't have the money to take care of it right now. So with my other giftings, what can I do to get? So you go back to the very beginning, when Adam was in the Garden of Eden, there was 4 different streams that came out of Eden. Eden means the presence of God and environment. So there's different streams, and so that's where you get streams of income. You know, just like rodeoing and roping and stuff, if a guy uses it correctly, you can be developing for the next stages of your life, because you have so much time in the truck. You have so much time that you can grow yourself if you use it. But most people waste their time instead of using their time to invest in themselves to become who they're supposed to be in the next stage of their life, which roping, I'm just using roping because that's what we're doing here, is this is only a certain stage of life. But if I have all these different streams coming, using all the gifts that are in me, because sometimes we get so pigeonholed or so focused with one area that we think this has to be all there is, and this is all that. But God's a big God, and I'm not saying you don't want to be going down so many roads that you're not good at any of them. But there's a grace on us to, okay, this is really hard right now. I feel like I'm supposed to keep going, but in the natural, I don't have the resources. I don't have what I need, but I'm going to keep this fire burning, but I'm going to begin to develop another area of my life that maybe generates some income to go towards this, and then now you have 2 streams, and then it's going to get hard up here again. Well, now you have this one going, and then, okay, maybe you develop out of that one to get the 3rd stream of income going, or whatever that is. So if you have the mindset, if I don't stop, I won't get stuck. Go ahead.
Right quick, the 2nd stream actually might be your real purpose.
Exactly.
And I think that makes it okay to leave this area or walk of life and say, hey, I found this path. And you can apply all of these things that you've learned, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you so much better at the next thing. And I think that's kind of the line, right? Is writing that a little bit of, making sure you're following what's on your heart, but also I think there has to be, you've got to be realistic with yourself in some ways. And this is a tough industry in general, right? And there's a lot of things that are kind of selfish,
very selfish.
Yeah, financially and a lot of it. So it's kind of tough to balance that, right? And I think I think there are some huge benefits from what you can get work ethic wise relationships, but also you see a lot of people be really successful in the next thing they do because of how hard they worked at this.
Where they were at.
Yeah. And then I also think like the other thing works well and it fuels that still, and they can be really happy as well with it. So that's I think that's one thing that Trey, I see a lot of people, I wish they didn't maybe end up where they were at, and they're really good people, but I feel like they play it safe, or they kind of, in their circle or their life, like they just never really stepped outside of it.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of those people, I think they tend to drink more, they tend to be, have just more demons that they just never really solved, and I think that's a hard balance, I think, to find, because it's a hard deal when there's not a lot of money to be made in this industry, but it's a really fulfilling thing when it goes good, right? And you get a lot of rewards out of it. And you're working with, you see yourself improve, horses improve, like you get competition. So there's a lot of neat things that fuel, right? So that's anyways, that's kind of where I just wanted to jump in right there.
And I think, I have the privilege to get to be a part of some of the youth programs, with Smarty, Preferred, the different ones and I think helping the next generation have a growth mindset, because if a person can learn to grow themselves, they will discover who they're called and created to be.
I agree.
Because it's a journey. It's a process of knowing God, of discovering what am I good at. Well, a lot of times you don't know what you're good at until you realize you're not even good at this.
Trey, is the process as important as a growth mindset as well, a process mindset, in your opinion? Will you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, well, it's just like in our roping. If we're always just thinking about the go buckle or the saddle or the trailer or just the result, well, it's going to take the life out of you, because that's all you're thinking about, instead of learning how am I going to get there, what's going to be by the process. A lot of times people give up on God is because they're just, well, how come my prayers didn't get answered? How come this didn't happen? It didn't work just right. And so they focus on that instead of the process of relationship, of growing me, the process, learning how to structure my day. If this is what I want, my success is determined by what I do daily.
Right.
Not by what I do just at the U.S. Finals or the World Series Finals or at Thomas and Mack or on Sundays or on whatever day you go to church. It's about what I do daily. So learning how to structure our day on purpose, to grow on purpose, that's staying like that. If I'm going to look up at the top of the stairs, that's the goal up there. That's the result. My prayer's answered, the NFR, whatever it is. But back it back down. What's the step? The process, the next step. Because if I know I win the day, and then I win the day, and then I win the day tomorrow, and I'm in the process of developing my thinking and developing my gifts and talents and abilities, and I'm doing this every day, well, eventually, one step after the other, I'm going to get the results. The results have to come.
So like for you, for example, day one of you deciding you want to help people, that person was not ready to be where you're at now, right?
No way.
And it's a long process to get here, and you really don't know how long it's going to take. And you got an idea where it's going to go, but maybe not, So I think that's the other thing, is you're building every single day, and you're building for things. But at the same time, that's why you try to do your very best that day, because when that opportunity arises, you want to be ready for it.
Exactly.
And I think this kind of goes to the next stage of it, when opportunities, and we can go back to roping with this, because I think there's another kind of big wall, is that failure that you talked about. And there's putting yourself out there, a lot of failure, trying to find the line of it, and pursue it, and not being afraid to fail. I think there's a couple things with competition I want to go with this.
Sure.
One, that mindset of like, hey, not being afraid to fail, like what does that look like? But I think you see this in competition, and maybe it just gets romanticized a little bit too much with like great athletes. But I think you see people that lose a little bit more, and it might just be luck, the reason why they lose. Like, hey, just a few bad things kind of went their way. Yeah. But it kind of takes them where they lose more than they win. And they maybe don't get the big wins in like you think, or they might not be world champions like you think. And they're still really good people.
Yeah.
And they probably deserve it at the end of the day, but they may not get over the hump. And then you see someone that's just like, no matter what, they can step up and they win, and they have just something about them that they just are able to finish and do things a little bit better, like at those big moments in the rest of the competition, right? Uh-huh. And I almost think it's, if you lose a lot, it really tests that belief system. Yeah, and you kind of got to be able to protect that a little bit. Uh-huh. Am I wrong with that? I don't know. Because I think that's like, if you get set up for failure and you fail too much, it's like, I can't climb this mountain. Yeah. And it's hard to take, once you start saying that and believing that, it's hard to get away from that, right? Yeah. But if you're a little bit overconfident, like, hey, I can do it, and maybe it's not realistic, but you just won't believe that, I think the odds increase for you to have that chance. And there's a line somewhere in the middle of this, Trey. Sure. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think, and that goes back to, having the right people with us, but having that relationship with the Lord and staying in the process of am I living a preparation? Because I live preparing. So when opportunities come, I'm not trying to get ready, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You can take that in roping, you can take it in business. If we're continually in the process and we're continually preparing, working on ourselves, we might not have everything, but our mindset's right, our belief system is protected like you're talking about. But when you do hit those walls and you feel like everywhere you turn it's a dead end and you can't get over the hump, it doesn't feel like you can, that's where we've got to go back to the one who made us. And is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And if it is, then the Spirit of God's going to speak to you, and you're going to have that drive. You're going to have in the area that you're created to do, but it's up to us to yield to it.
Yeah.
It's up to us to act on it, to keep going, just like roping for me. I've got so many other things going. A lot of times I keep it before the Lord. Lord, am I supposed to keep working at this? Am I supposed to keep, but there's so many people attached to it. And so the answer is yes, just because it's not about the NFR, it's about people for me. Well, it's the same way in business, same way in ministry. I always ask myself when I get on a plane to go somewhere, if money was no option, would I be doing this? What would I be doing?
Yeah.
And I would be getting on a plane to go somewhere, I'd be doing what I'm doing. And so that intimate relationship with the Lord where you can really learn to hear and hear, because there's times life gets hard, life happens, and you've got to allow. God's DNA is fight the good fight of faith, win, overcome. We're made in His image and likeness, and we lose that when we get away from the Lord. But as far as if we stay in the presence of the Lord and we're working on our relationship with Him, you're always going to hear His voice saying, if you're in the area of giftedness and this is what you're created, you're going to hear Him say, keep going, keep going. You'll never hear Him say, run, get out, you can't do it, you wimp.
Do you think there's better times to have those like moments of self-reflection in the day? Or to me, we're pretty emotional in some of our thoughts that pop up and arise, and I think they can really influence your thoughts one way or another. Is there a time of day or something you like to do on how to kind of get a clear mind so you can start really processing these things? Because I think that's also it, is we want to attach a lot of emotions to what our decisions. And I think you got to get to that stage, right, where there's no emotion. It's just like, hey, where do I see this? And what's that kind of that internal feeling, right? Like that inspiration from God, or however you want to phrase it, like wherever it comes from. But I know for me, there's definitely times where I don't need to ask, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I'm not ready to talk to myself, right? Or I'm not listening either.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's something like just from hey, would you do this in the mornings? Would you do this when it's more quiet? Like how would you try to set that up to have moments where you can just try to be in touch with your life and take emotion out and make good decisions for yourself?
Well, the morning time has always been very important to me.
Okay.
Proverbs 8:17 says, "Those who seek me early and diligently, they will find me." Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So when I first got saved and I saw that, the power of putting God first, it was like, well, I might not know what any of the other Bible means, but at least I know what first means.
This is pretty good.
This is starting.
It's pretty good.
And so I just started putting him first. And so I've learned that I hear clear in the mornings. I don't have all the things pulling on me throughout the day. I haven't dealt with a lot of mess yet.
Yeah.
For the day, it's clear. I'm able to hear. I'm able to be real with myself, self-reflect. Am I going where I'm supposed to be going, doing what I'm supposed to be doing? What's my growth plan like? Am I growing on purpose? Because destiny, success doesn't just happen. You got to do it on purpose.
Yeah.
And so the morning times is a time that I protect with everything. That means if I've got to get up, don't matter what country I'm in, if I've got to get up for everybody else, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
If I got to lock myself in the bathroom, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever I've got to do, because that's my lifeline. People always ask me, how do you keep going like you've gone? I mean, I've gone at this pace for a long time now. And I've learned to stay plugged into my energy sources. You at the airport, you get off the plane, and they've got it figured out because they have energy sources all around the airport because they know people don't get in a very good mood if their phones are dead and their iPads are dead and all their electronics are dead. So they have electric plugs everywhere. I've begun to think about, okay, there's a reason why he said love God with all your heart, your soul, which is your mind, will, and emotions, and all your strength, all that you are, plug in to you. So I have energy sources that I keep plugged into all the time. And I look at my calendar, okay, where do I need to show up and be 100% today? Because you can't be 100% at all times.
Yeah.
So, okay, here I need to be 100%, here I need to be 100%, here I need to be 100%. But in between, I'm going to be making sure I'm listening to the right stuff. I'm going to be reading the right stuff. I'm going to be doing the right things to keep me full and overflowing because I can't give something I don't have.
Right.
And so learning how to stay plugged into the energy sources, learning how to create that environment first thing in the morning where my mind's right, my heart's right, my words are right. Because a lot of times when you wake up in the morning, that's when the enemy hits your thinking. You wake up and you're thinking about all the bills, you're thinking about, this happened, all the negative stuff starts going. And so we have to learn to control our mind.
Yeah.
And control our heart and create that environment where this is a growth environment that is going to produce if I will protect it. Because everything is designed to be in a certain environment. You think of a fish, you put the fish in the right environment in the water, and what's in it just comes out. You stick a plant in the ground, the right environment, what's in the plant comes out. Well, you and I, God made the environment before he made the product. He made the water before he made the fish. He made the ground before he made the plant. He made the presence of God before he made man. And so when you put the product in the right environment, it is going to produce. We're made to function out of the presence of God.
Right.
But what happens if you take the fish out of the water? It dies. What happens if you take the plant out of the dirt? It dies. What happens if you take the stars out of the firmament? Meteorite, they malfunction. What happens when you take man out of God's presence? We malfunction and die.
Yeah.
So when we create the environment of what we're watching, what we're listening to, what we're reading right off the bat in the morning, then what's in us comes alive.
I love that. Okay, so back to youth and younger people.
Yeah.
I think there's this dynamic between parents and their kids with communication, right? Let's go from the parents' perspective. I think there's a lot of times where as things start to get pretty competitive, the parents, obviously, they want to see their kids do good. And you've got this dynamic, what would you see like, what would ideal communication be like between parents and their kids, kind of helping them pursue passions and helping them find them? Like, if you're giving advice to parents first, and then maybe kids for how they could communicate and listen as well a little bit.
Well, I've done a lot of stuff wrong, but I have figured some stuff I've learned over certain time. And a parent is the first mental coach that a kid has.
Right.
And that's going to help create them for the rest of their life. And so the way that we talk to our kids, it's either going to help their self-image be positive, or it's going to cause their self-image to be negative. Now, the old, you're nothing, you're sorry, trying to kind of the reverse psychology, that only works for a certain time. Yeah, it might cause some short-term drive, but the beat-up mentality, you're no good, you're not as good as your sister, you're not as good as little Jimmy down the road, whatever the case is, that only works for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
It actually ends up hurting kids over the long haul when a parent takes that approach. So as a parent, we've got to think, how does our Heavenly Father talk to us? He's not going to talk to us like we're nothing. You're so stupid. You'll never make it. You're not any good. Who do you think you are? He doesn't talk like that. So I've tried to learn the way he would talk to me and talk to my kids the same way.
So I'm going to give you an example I think happens quite a bit. Let's say a young boy starts roping pretty well, and he gets, which in the numbering system, they have a tendency to want to raise younger kids
Quickly.
Probably, yes, very quickly. So he gets raised maybe before he's not ready. And the parents they get upset. He's not a number 7 healer. He doesn't rope like that.
Yeah.
And that's what they hear. And I think, how should a parent handle that when maybe they get something like that, and how that affects their beliefs and how they do things?
Well, of course, as a parent, having enough self-control to process what's going on and to put ourselves in our kids' shoes, and because words have power.
Right.
The power of life and death is in the tongue. And throwing the ball back to the kid, well, what do you think you should do during this time? Because questions release potential. And so if we can learn to ask our kids questions, how are you thinking? What do you think about this? Before we jump in there, that way we can locate where they're at, and then the words that we speak, they're words of growth, they're words of life, process.
We got a mountain to climb.
It's not about the go buckle. This doesn't determine who you are. Okay, so what does this look like? If you're really that good, do you think if you keep doing what you're doing, you're still going to keep progressing? Because now you're at a different level, so your process is going to have to look a little bit different. Helping them have that process mentality instead of putting their identity in their roping, or putting their identity whether they win or whether they lose, whatever it is, instead of helping them grow as a person.
Right.
The words being uplifting, even if we have to correct. Studies say that it takes 11 positives to negate 1 negative. Some say it takes 5 positive to negate 1 negative. They say by the time a person's 18 years old, you've heard no, you can't 150,000 times. And yes, you can 5,000 times. That's a 30-to-1 ratio, where it's developing a can't mentality into our youth.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, we've got to think our responsibility is to help pull the greatness out of this kid. And of course, nowadays there's a lot of blended families. There's a lot of, and one parent will live one way, another parent lives a different way. And so there's a real battle there.
Yeah.
Because one parent handles things this way and another parent handles things this way. But all we can control is what we can control. What does the best me look like? How can I handle my kid in such a way that it's going to help them develop into the person they're created to be? No matter what field they go into, it's going to help them. They're going to excel because of who they are.
Right. Yeah. So we're wanting them to be
good people.
Good people. This is something we like to do. We're passionate about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what stage you're at with it. We're wanting to get better and pursue it and practice and focus on what we need to do each day with our practice to get better, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mindset and that process mindset. And I think that's where a lot of things get developed, like discipline, the hard work, the ups and the downs, and really you get to get yourself battle tested, right? From a kid's standpoint, though, how would you suggest that, like listening to your parents and communicating with your parents about things that you want to do or you're passionate about, or maybe finding other things or pursuing them, with family or friends?
Well, a lot of in today's society, and this is a lot our fault, our generation, because you want the kids to have it better than you.
Yeah.
And so you just hand a lot of stuff to them instead of them working the process to accomplish it because of, you think of the struggle, the hurt, the pain that you went through, and you think, man, I want it to be better for my kids. But really, the process is so important in order for them to be able to have it. So from a kid's perspective of being teachable and being coachable and not having the mindset that you deserve as far as just everything handed to you. And so respect and being teachable, true humility goes a long ways. No matter what field you're in, if you're teachable and coachable and you're willing to put in the work, people that succeed, they want to help people like that.
Yeah.
But if you're prideful and arrogant and you think you have it all figured out, well, look at me, I'm 16 and I can rope better than you, or whatever the case is, they're not going to go very far.
Yep.
That's where the gift takes us a certain place, but it's the choices we put with the gifts that position us to be who we're created to be.
Okay. What about in decision making within like the process that you're working? So let's say, for example, there's a decision you want to make with your business or your horses or whatever it is, and you'll get advice. And you've got a good group of people around you that you trust. But you believe in something, and they're telling you to do something else. How do you make sure that what you believe in is true to yourself and you can pursue it? Or you're not being humble enough and seeing it from their view, and maybe they're right. But also, how do you find that line between like, hey, maybe this is the way that I need to pursue it, and this what's on my heart, they don't see it or whatever. It's the right decision for you, and you got to be able to say, hey, I'm going to do this and defend it. But also from the other side, how do you make sure that you're not being cocky or too overconfident or whatever it is? How do you try to ride that line, Trey?
Well,
Is that the slipperiest of slopes?
Well, it's slippery. It is, because it's one of those things, you're going to do it right and you're going to do it wrong.
Yeah.
But really, it comes down to a heart condition. If we're really in the process of becoming the man or woman we're created to be, and there are going to be times that you're going to step out and do stuff. Everybody around you is telling you it's wrong, but you know deep down in here, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Maybe a lot of humility with this decision too.
It is. Yeah. It's a lot of humility. I remember when I just won the Rookie of the Year, and the process right after that, barely missed making the finals. Then you go on, make the finals, all that type of stuff. But I knew there was a shift coming in my life. And so I went home and I was seeking, before the Lord. And the Lord showed me this, the story of Peter getting out of the boat and walking on the water. When he looked at the Lord and he said, Lord, if it's you bid me to come, and Jesus said, well, come. Well, Peter was the only one that got out of the boat and walked on water. And just in my heart, the Lord showed me this picture of James and John and all the disciples in the boat that loved Peter, and they were yelling out to Peter, Peter, get back in the boat. Peter, what are you doing? We love you, Peter. We know what's best for you, Peter. But Peter didn't. But he was the only one that walked on water.
Yeah.
And the Lord said, that's fixing to happen to you when you start telling your family and friends and people that you're laying your roping down and you're done. Getting rid of trucks, Trey got rid of everything. And he said, that's what's fixing to happen to you. So you've got to have it settled on the inside. And I think we do need those people around us that tell us the truth. But there comes transitional times in a person's life where you've really got to listen and hear. That I just know. I know this. I'm not being arrogant. I'm not being rebellious. I'm not being prideful. I just know this is what I'm supposed to do, regardless if you like it or you don't like it.
Yeah, and that can go back to not being afraid of failure and things like that. I think having a lot of humility in that, because it's a tough decision at times.
Yeah.
But I think there's times where I think someone might be afraid to step out and do things, and and it probably was there and it was worth pursuing. But also there's probably times where maybe they would have ran that business off a cliff or done something terrible, and it would have been a huge mistake. And so it's like it's a tough line to ride. But I think it's important that you try to kind of be on both sides of it with some humility, right?
Yeah, for sure. Still to this day, my dad, because he doesn't say a whole lot, but when he does, it makes me take it before the Lord.
Yeah.
Because when he said something in the past, I mean, still to this day, I call him and apologize that he's not as dumb as I thought he was. You know? That he's a lot smarter than what I thought he was whenever I was growing up.
Yeah.
But there's certain people in your life when they say something, you know, it's worth praying about. It's worth really listening,
Right.
and seeking to understand. Then there's other times that you can have everybody else against you, even people in your family or close to you, and you're just like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that courage to step out, and you've got to be willing to fail. It's kind of like roping to catch compared to roping to win.
Right.
Two total different mindsets.
Yep.
You're just roping not to make mistakes. Well, there's not going to be a lot of success in that. But if you're roping to win and be your best, well, the results are going to be different.
Right. Right. What about, we got this question earlier today. When you go through trials or things that happen that are, it's hard to understand, and they start to lose faith, and you kind of see that happening or have those feelings.
Yeah.
How do you try to suggest to people to manage that when they start to lose faith?
Yeah, that's a good question because it happens to all of us at times. You know, you feel weak, you feel beaten up. But just like a roping, if a person has good fundamentals, good position, good swing, timing, delivery, you don't really get into slumps necessarily because you have a good foundation. You can go back and fix it pretty quick. You know, but within a day, you can probably navigate through. Well, it's the same way in our relationship with the Lord. That if I have good fundamentals, I put God first, I'm renewing my mind to God's word, I'm creating this environment of praise and worship, strength is going to come because you go back to your fundamentals instead of looking at the results. Well, I prayed this way and it didn't happen, and it seems like everywhere I look I'm getting punched in the face and all this hell's going on. Go back to your fundamentals. Okay, draw a line, just like this line here. Jesus said that it's the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So I see all these trials, all these things, and it's Jesus that came to give me life and life more abundantly. So if it's bad, I know that it's either the enemy or I've just done some really dumb stuff, you know? So I've got to locate, okay, where's this coming from? Why is it coming? If I'm the one that caused all the mess, then that's where I need to ask for mercy. But I know God is good, and I know God is faithful, and I know God will help me. He has never let anybody down, and I know that he'll help me. So getting back and drawing that line and realizing where's the problem coming from and go back to good fundamentals. God is good. God is faithful. His words always work. And it's a choice to believe that. And I will step back from my Bible and I'll ask, if I truly believe that if God is for me and not against me, how am I going to act? If I truly believe that God will take all the bad things and turn it for my good, how am I going to think? How am I going to act? What's my body posture going to be? If I truly believe that God cannot lie, how am I going to act? And so that sticks me in a place of faith where I'm choosing to believe God's word, even though the conditions out here look totally different than what God promises in his word. That happens to all of us. But when I have good fundamentals, I get back in the presence of the Lord. I'm doing the last thing God told me to do. I'm renewing my mind. I'm forgiving and releasing anybody I need to release and forgive and let go of. Strength will come. You know, I remember I was in the hospital when I was born. You know, I had a lot of surgeries and stuff on my feet and restructured my feet. And I was going through a very difficult time, and it just felt like, you know, Lord, what's going on? I felt so weak. And he took me back. He says, Trey, remember the times in the hospital when you had those IVs running in you and you felt really weak, but you knew as long as you saw that drip coming out of the IV, drip, 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 you knew strength was coming. You knew nourishment was coming. He says, if you'll just stay in my word like that, strength is coming. Passion is coming. Fire is coming. The ability it's coming, but you've got to stay in the word. You know, a lot of times we want God to do things our way instead of us doing it his way.
Right.
Our way doesn't work very much, you know, but his way always works. And so going back to that place of relationship, staying in the word, choosing to believe his word, locating where is it coming from, going back, God is good and faithful, his word always works, strength will come.
I love that. What about your favorite testimonial, or, you know, you've been on, I mean, it's the last 5-6 years, you've probably experienced more than I'll ever be able to catch up with you on. So is there anything that jumps out to you as like, wow, this is a special moment
Yeah.
and just something really neat that you got to be part of or see?
One of the last orphanages we went into, Pace, there was 106 kids, and you walk into this orphanage and the smell almost made you just throw up because it was so much stench. There was only 2 adults taking care of 106 kids. They only had a stream of water about that wide and about that deep that they would get the water out, and they'd boil the water to take care of all those kids, and of course the disease and the sickness and stuff. And I remember the first time we went in there, I looked at the team that I was with. I says, if the leadership are willing to let us help them with their thinking and the way they do things, we'll get behind this. That we're just not going to throw money at it, but we'll try to be a part of the solution. And so sure enough, they were, and we got the surveys done, and we was able to drill them a well. And when I was back in February, and we're squirting this water up in the air, and these kids are just running and jumping and cheering, and this one little girl, she comes up, and tears are just running down her face, and she just said, thank you that I don't have to be sick anymore.
Yeah.
When you see stuff that we take for granted, I mean, we don't have to think about water.
Right.
But that little girl, the lady said, I've never seen Jesus before, but we are today through you. Those are life-changing moments.
Yeah.
Because it isn't those kids' choice. They didn't choose to be in that environment. They didn't choose for their parents to leave them or to die or whatever the case is. And so when you get to make a difference like that, it's pretty special.
Well, and it's just part of a unique story that you have too, that it just, hey, if I can do things like this and just help build that, it's unbelievable how far, like, just since I've known you, Trey, how big of an impact you've made. I told you the other day on the phone, I was like, when we decided to start X Factor, you're the first yes. And probably if we'd have heard some no's right off, we wouldn't have really got going, and then on top of it, like, you're married, Nikki and I, and we go through the premarital counseling with you, and it really helped our relationship, and it was just a lot of stuff that you made a huge impact. And then, we've been able to create a lifestyle out of it. And it's like, hey, it's just cool to see with you because, one, you've grown a ton, but you've stayed very consistent with who you are.
Wow.
Ever since what have I known you, 10, 12 years now? And it's very uncommon for me to see someone that's the same every single time. They're just, and I think that's what's really neat about you. And so I really do respect that, Trey. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. It means a lot. And I know it's just the goodness of the Lord, because it is something when I first started going after God, I didn't want to be somebody up there in front of people that was different, with my family. I didn't want my wife and kids to see a different person, and so it just keeps me just working at me. And that doesn't mean, believe me, I've made a lot of mistakes. I have asked for forgiveness just like anybody, and I get upset when I shouldn't get upset, and it's just a part of the growth process.
It's just human.
Yeah.
But I think that's the one thing that I try to look for in people is like, hey, is someone doing this? Have they been doing it for a long time? Are they consistent? Do they love it? And I think that's where you see someone get to the highest of levels of whatever they pursue. Yeah. And those are my favorite people to be around and to look at and watch, take things from how they do and like look up to, because I just think that's purpose, that they've found that they're passionate people, and I think it's really easy to kind of fall into other things and may not be your best,
Right.
So I really do respect that, Trey.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been fun today.
Thanks.
Yeah.